Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Jill.
So
How are you?
I'm good. So thank you for joining me today. And so let's kick off with a little bit. So just introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name's Rachel Hubbard, and I'm now considered to be a menopause and exercise specialist. And this is based on, I think, over the past 15 years, I've been dabbing in and out of menopause. I had a very traumatic menopause myself following ovarian cancer. And I suddenly realised that I needed to do more because I was one of the people that HRT was denied. And when you start to read the research around menopause, you kind of think like, hang on, this is quite a serious issue for many women. Some women sail through it. Some women are like me and they've had a more traumatic time. And so I started to look into the research during lockdown. So went back to my dissertation and found out that there's information in there that I didn't know. Now, my background has always been fitness. I was a course director with YMCA for 15 years. I worked with Fitness Wales for 10 years, delivering courses on level 2, level 3 gym instructor, Pilates, but also GP referral. I don't know how many GP referral courses I've done. Never once do they talk about menopause.
No, I've dealt with them. Yeah, no, never.
And you suddenly kind of go like, well, half of the issues to do with aging had to do with the menopause. Why aren't we talking about it? And the more I looked around, the more I thought there is nothing out there for fitness instructors to kind of say, like, in the menopause, this happens. This means when you're doing training, you need to think about this bit, or you need to consider this bit, because it's not on the PARQ. It's not on any standard. The only thing they ask is your age and gender. So you're supposed to guess. But how do you know? How do you know if somebody's gone through the menopause, if they're 47 or 53, or, there's all of these different kinds of things. So I wrote a course. I wrote a course for fitness instructors to say, like, look, here's the basic outline of the things in menopause that are a real issue. I ran the course. I thought I need qualifications. I got it through CIMSPA. So CIMSPA awarded it 7 CPD points. And I ran it twice. And then YMCA approached me, and we've been working with the YMCA to get this fitness professionals course out so that there is a standard industry qualification for people to say, look, I'm a menopause fitness coach. So that all of these women like us, and I'm a knowledgeable fitness tutor. I've been teaching since 1986. I've been a course director, and I didn't understand until I went through it myself.
That's a really valid point, because all the knowledge that I've got, I've learned myself through going through the menopause and had to research everything myself. So it's a very valid point. So the first kind of what I wanted to ask you about was, how can women, so obviously perimenopause, right? I think that there is this little area where maybe women are not sure. They're a little like, maybe feeling moody, maybe just not feeling themselves. So
Exactly.
so what would you say? Like,
well, menopause is hormonally driven change. And it's linked to our periods and menstruation patterns. And when we approach our period, we get moody, we get grumpy, we want sugar, we get a bit bloaty, we can't sleep, we get a little bit more sweaty, we get a little bit more spotty. And then our period starts and we kind of go, oh yeah, that's fine. Well, perimenopause is just like PMS. It is that kind of change in hormone that it doesn't come in it doesn't come nice and gradually. It drops down occasionally, and then it stabilizes, and then it goes off on one. So when these changes to hormones start to influence our bodies, the early signs are usually around our periods. But there are 30 now, over 30, I think there's 34 recognized symptoms of early menopause, and some of which are not really obvious. And I think you coined it earlier, which is why women feel like they're going mad. because they're so random. You get itchy skin, you get flaky hair, your hair starts falling out, and you think like, well, that's got nothing to do with my period stopping. You know, you get bleeding gums, you get a burning mouth, you get a funny taste in your mouth, you start having body odor, you get muscle pains, you pick up new allergies. Now, I'm a carnivore. I've been a carnivore all my life, but the minute I hit menopause, I couldn't eat meat again. It gave me migraines. And I've never eaten meat since. It's really bizarre. So you tend to get all of the other things, and not every woman gets the same thing. No. And I think that's a big issue as well, Jill, because your menopause journey would be different to mine. You know, and I think like it's very difficult sometimes. But if you think something's not quite right, then I would go and get it checked out. Because the sooner you can get it checked out, the sooner you can get help. No matter how you're doing it, whether you're on HRT or not, but you get a little bit more knowledgeable and a little bit more educated in the earlier phases.
I remember going to the doctors because I felt so out of whack and depressed.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you're fine. Absolutely fine. But now looking back, I can see that was the start of...
Well, they say that women go 5 times to the GP before they get menopause diagnosis. And they quite often diagnose with fibromyalgia, early onset dementia, depression. When I first went, and listen, I had a hysterectomy and they didn't tell me I was going to go into big menopause. And I went to the doctor and I go, like, I feel like my mojo's gone. I says, I can't explain it. She goes, are you depressed? I said, no. I says, I just feel like flat. So they put me on antidepressants, and I was going, but I'm not depressed. And I think that we're so used to this, but you know, some of the stats coming out that only 41% of all doctors learn menopause at training level.
There's some actually quite shocking statistics about depression, isn't there, for women that are diagnosed with depression, and it's actually their hormones. So would you then suggest now, do you think things have changed where, like, because like how can women manage if they feel they're having these early symptoms? Like, what would you suggest?
Well, I would say that the aging process is quite slow. You know, we age gradually from the age of 30. So we kind of peak at 30 and then it's downhill from there on in. But menopause is quick. You know, it's 6 to 10 years. I know that doesn't sound quick. But in terms of like when you're going through puberty, it's like puberty in reverse. And these hormonal fluctuations that you get in perimenopause, like the hot flushes or the night sweats, are the hormonal changes that's got nothing to do with aging. And so when you start to see these weird things like your periods become irregular or they could become heavy, you have those mood swings that you were talking about, or you can't sleep at night, you know, and you used to be a good sleeper. So I think it's like a change in what you do. And perimenopause can occur anytime from about the age of 40 onwards. And by 51, they say we've finished. And I just think, like, you know, the stats, as you say, in that 1 in 10 women don't know they're going through the menopause. 1 in 4 have no symptoms at all. And 3 in 4 have some, and 1 in 4 have huge amounts. So, you know, some people are too embarrassed to go to their GP, especially if they've got UTIs or they've got incontinence, or, you know, they're going to think like, well, there's nothing to do with me, you know, and I just find it's really difficult. And we're talking about white women. Whereas, you know, if you are an Asian, Black, LGBT, non-binary, you got ADHD or autism, this is even a worse phase for us because A, there's less information out there, and B, if you've got any kind of neurodivergency, it's worse.
Yeah. And so what do you think, like, lifestyle changes, like, because lifestyle, obviously, it does have a massive impact on it too. I mean, we've both got a fitness background. And I think, you know, what we say, you know, you need to eat better, you need to work out, like, get your steps in, rest, recovery is more important, reduce your stress. But I sometimes think that it becomes a bit white noise. because
And you know, there's more to it than that, because I think that, say, like if you have what they call a natural menopause. So let's take somebody who's been fit and active all their life. They eat well, they don't drink too much, they don't have any conditions like low thyroid or asthma or anything else that can influence menopause. They've had a few children, because women without children have a very difficult time in menopause. And that journey might be quite straightforward, or you might be on the pill, because the pill still has estrogen and progesterone. So you might not notice because you've got the coil in, or you've got, you're still taking a contraceptive pill. And then other women, say, for example, I use myself as having ovarian cancer, but you could have, say, maybe bowel cancer or breast cancer at 30, and you're in the menopause straight away. And so that's why I think it's so difficult. When we talk about lifestyle advice, we can give general advice, okay? But we can't say that's for everybody. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work, because your journey into and out of menopause is dependent upon what was your lifestyle like before menopause. Maybe you were somebody who was generally happy and ate well. Maybe you were a vegetarian or a vegan, or, maybe you did a lot of meditation and you didn't have a stressful life. Your menopausal journey is going to be different. If you're a busy working mum and you've got elderly parents that you have to care for as well, and you have other health issues, maybe you've got type 2 diabetes, maybe if you've got underactive thyroid or overactive thyroid, the estrogen, the lack of estrogen influences your thyroid, and you can get a worse kind of menopause because of that. So we can say yes, like you say, I always say the 4 pillars are exercise, food, sleep, and friends. And that's it. But understanding why, like you say, sometimes you kind of think like, oh, that just sounds so pathetic because I feel so rubbish. How dare you tell me to go for a walk? How is going for a walk going to help me? And I found that's been the key thing for me, is to explain why going for a walk makes a difference in menopause. Whereas, when you're a teenager, you go for a walk, you don't think twice about it, do you? Go out, have a walk. You just think like, I'm going for a walk. Where all of a sudden going for a walk in your menopause is massive. So today I think I did a post on BDNF. So I don't know whether you want me to talk about this now.
Yeah, go for it.
So BDNF is a real kind of a thing for women in menopause. So I don't know whether you had brain fog. Did you have brain fog?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think for my journey, if I didn't do the weight training,
absolutely,
I probably would have killed someone by now. But because I exercise first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
It helps. It does.
It absolutely helps.
It does help.
So we have cognitive health, and then we have mental health. So cognitive health is like to do with the amount of grey matter in your brain. So when we go through menopause, the hippocampus starts to shrink. And the hippocampus is there for memory, learning, concentration, but also what you said, emotional regulation. So when we start to lose estrogen, we lose that barrier to help us manage our feelings. I don't know about you. Did you have a rage? I have a very famous story about destroying my dressing table because the drawer wouldn't shut.
Yeah, been there, done
that. Throwing it across the room. Yeah. And then going like, what is going on? You must have had something like you say, if you didn't know weight training, and I was just thinking like, this is just mad. So we've got the cognitive health, and then we have the mental health issues. So people often talk about being more anxious, and estrogens does such a good job of mitigating cortisol. When there's no estrogen there, your cortisol levels are higher than normal. All right. So you do feel more anxious, you do feel more stressed without anything else changing in your life. Your just anxiety comes up. So we know exercise, in particular aerobic exercise, but also resistance training and weight training, they've got other benefits as well, improves the hippocampal volume. which means you're more likely to have a more resilient brain. You can still remember, you can still do things, you can remember people's names, you can remember where you park the car. You don't put your toaster in the bin and your milk in the bread bin. You know, all the stupid things that we've all done in that kind of transition time. And when you have poor mental health, it diminishes your BDNF. So exercise is a real key thing, because it's been scientifically proven to improve mental health and well-being. Yes, because it improves hippocampal volume. And we now know in menopause, hippocampal volume is going down. So all of a sudden, instead of doing exercise because, you know, we think we should, we're kind of going like, hang on, I don't want dementia. I'm going to go and do some exercise. And like you say, the different forms of exercise that women have to take on board in menopause is based around some of the aging processes, and things like weight training and bone density, which I know we're going to talk about later, is so key and so important. But if you know that at perimenopause phase, that's the time we want to be starting to go to the gym. Because the other thing, and I'm sure you found this as well as me, is that you lose confidence.
Yeah.
You know, I was a fitness instructor all my life. If you saw me at 51, Jill, I was like a skinny thing with a six-pack. And by 61, I had gone. And I was like, hang on, I've been training for 30 years. What happened? And it's not the case for everybody. It's because I had lots of operations and other things. But I just lost confidence to stand up in front of people and teach.
But I think it does affect all those areas, doesn't it? It affects like your self-esteem, your confidence.
Yeah. So, and then we're saying to women, like, okay, get some Lycra on, go in the gym. You know, it's all of a sudden a bigger issue to think about exercising than it was 10 years previously. And I think like the fitness industry really has to kind of change to be more welcoming to a group of women who may never have been to the gym, and we want them in the gym. We want them.
Yeah, 100%. But I think the gym can be I've got my own little private studio, and the majority of my clients are menopausal women who will not step foot in a gym. And the good thing is like over time we'll build their confidence, and they will do that transition, but it takes a lot of work first.
Yeah, I teach online. I teach weights online because some people are too scared to leave the house.
Yeah.
And they think like, well, if I'm in a room by myself and nobody's watching me, I can practice it. And if I make a mistake, I know maybe you don't want to make a mistake weight training, but if I was making a mistake, say doing Pilates, or I went the wrong way doing aerobics, nobody's going to laugh at me. And I think that whole issue of feeling uncomfortable in the gym is a real key thing. And it's what I did my dissertation on, you know, how do you perceive yourself in a gym environment? And I think for me, that was my issue as a personal trainer, was I found women who I'd been teaching for years suddenly changed, and we're going like, oh yeah, but you know, my t-shirt feels tight, and you know, your boobs get bigger and your feet get bigger, and you kind of think like, what's going on, you know? And when you run, everything wobbles a bit more, and all of those things that you never felt when you were younger.
Some of them sweat too much now.
The sweat is ridiculous because we've got less estrogen, we've got more testosterone. It's like, oh, we haven't got more testosterone, but it's a different balance, isn't it?
So there has been a lot more on the TV and stuff about menopause, HRT. I think there was a documentary about a week ago as well, wasn't there, about HRT? So what do you feel the pros and cons are? Do you think as well, this is kind of like a double question, do you think as well that after there was the whole Davina McCall thing, a lot of women kind of rushed to get HRT that maybe hadn't tried it before, because I think there was quite a lot of cases of it selling out and they didn't have any, what would you say to women? Would your advice be go try it, or do you think there are certain candidates that would be better than others?
Yeah, I think there are definitely certain candidates, and remember, this is my personal opinion. I'm not a GP.
Yeah, mine too.
But I think like Davina McCall was a really interesting and kind of a pioneer. But it's like anything on that you're an influencer on. So, you can go on TikTok and, buy your latest gadget, and people will buy it because it seems to be the thing to do. So like you said, so many women went. Now, there are 13 million women around that in the UK of menopausal age. Currently, and this is 2023, 14% of them are on HRT.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really small percentage, because lots of people kind of go like, oh no, we're HRT. So what is HRT? So you've got different types of HRT. So you can have estrogen only, estrogen and progesterone, or you can have estrogen only and testosterone, or estrogen, progesterone and testosterone. And these are the hormones that reduce. So you will have estrogen only if you are somebody who doesn't have a womb. So say like if you've had hysterectomy or anything like that, you don't have the progesterone. You only have the progesterone if you have a womb. This applies to trans men. Okay, so if you've no womb, then you still have menopause at times because of the change in hormones. Then the testosterone, in this country, GPs don't advise it. But the research around testosterone is quite fantastic in what it does for you. So we go back to, what is your menopausal journey? If you're somebody fit and active, who eats well, who exercises regularly. So remember, in your body, estrogen is produced in the ovaries and through a kind of complex enzyme system through your fat. So if you're somebody who has a very fat belly, that stops that process happening. If you're somebody who has a very skinny belly, when you exercise, you actually produce a little bit of estrogen. You might be doing exercising, have a slim belly, and you're on the pill, which has also got a bit of estrogen in it. It's not the same level as HRT, but it's a little bit. And you eat lots of vegetables. So lots of vegetables, as you well know, got phytoestrogen. So you have estrogen within the plant. So if you eat a lot of soy and chia seeds and flax seeds, then you're eating estrogen as well. You probably don't need HRT. If you're managing, you probably don't need HRT. Who needs HRT? What does HRT do for us? And why is it so different? So one of the things, I'm going to skip ahead to bone density. So if you remember your gym level 2, when we talked about the bone shaft, within the bone shaft, we have osteoclasts and osteoblasts. So osteoblasts are the bone builders. So like it makes new bone throughout our life. Osteoclasts are the bone cleaners. So they come in, they get rid of the old bone and they clear it out. Now, as we go through menopause, estrogen is a key primer for the osteoblasts to work. Without estrogen, okay, so you've got no ovaries, either through chemical intervention or surgical intervention, you have no estrogen in your body, you do not produce any more new bone mass. And without producing new bone mass, your chances of having osteoporosis double. 1 in 5 women over the age of 50 will break a bone. They say a woman breaks a bone, within a year, 12 months, they'll break another bone. And these are now the change in the protocols. So I went to a conference on the weekend where we had the top, one of the surgeons from London looking at bone density and menopause. And they're now prescribing HRT to people who've had cancer treatment, whereas before they'd kind of go like, oh no, you can't have it because of the small risk of breast cancer. But now what they're finding is, if you break your hip, then your life expectancy drops by 40%. It's a huge problem for women. So
I've got 2 clients at the moment that are just 50 and they've both had a fall and broken bones. And they've now been diagnosed with osteopenia.
But do you know, the thing is that is the first kind of symptom, is you have broken a bone. Mm-hmm. Whereas we need to be kind of looking at people saying, okay, so we know corticosteroids, I can't even say it, the asthma pumps, and stuff you take for eczema. They make you lose bone mass. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're on the pill and you've got high levels of estrogen, that improves your bone mass. So if you're somebody who's been on the pill for 20 years, your bone mass density is probably higher. There's a really interesting research where they did 3 groups of women, all doing weight training. So one group were doing weight training only, one group were doing weight training and taking HRT, and one group were taking HRT only. So the group that were doing exercise, weight training, but no HRT, had improvements in bone mass. The group that did weight training with HRT had a better improvement. And the group that took HRT only had the same bone improvement as those exercising.
Oh, okay.
And it's shocking because you think like, so I have to work and you weight train. You're going to have to weight train 2 to 3 times a week for at least a year in order to be able to get the change. Are women likely to stick at that? Are all women likely to stick at that? You know, why maybe have you had cancer? Maybe you've got probably, I'm not saying this is always the case, there's usually something else there. So maybe you're obese, maybe you've got type 2 diabetes, maybe you've got high blood pressure, maybe you're somebody with a bad back already, and so you don't move much, so you're inactive, you don't have a good diet. Then the chances are you are going to break a bone. And so HRT suddenly doesn't become about relieving the kind of perimenopause hot flush. It becomes a serious issue in terms of bone density. And there's a similar links with dementia. So without estrogen in the brain, so in the brain, if you think of where the brain sits in the skull, they know that you get buildup of plaque onto the brain. And without an estrogen is one of the kind of hormones that comes into the brain and helps clean the brain of plaque. So the higher your plaque, the more likely to have dementia and Alzheimer's. You go into any nursing home, it's nearly all women, isn't it? It's hardly any men in there. And so women might be living longer, but they're not living a happy, healthy life. They're living in nursing care homes, or they're burdens to their family, or, you know, they're leading a life that is not well lived. And so you might say, okay, you don't sleep well, you've got insomnia, okay, you're not exercising regularly, you're not eating, you haven't had any children, because remember, people haven't had any children, and you're asthmatic, then you're going to be a stronger candidate for HRT. So I don't think, even though I think it is the woman's choice to decide to go and get HRT, there also has to be a kind of a more logical decision in terms of the pros and cons. What are the pros for me taking HRT in terms of bone density, in terms of cognitive health? And then the third one that HRT really influences is cardiovascular disease. So cardiovascular disease is the biggest killer in the world of women. It kills more women than all the cancers put together. And that is because we lose that protective factor of estrogen onto what's called the epithelial cells. So if you think about the cells within the body, the tubes, you know, some people are squeamish about tubes, aren't they? So your blood vessels and the chambers of the heart. We know that when you hit perimenopause, your endothelial cells get influenced. You lose cardiac function, okay? So you lose power in the left ventricle. So you can exercise the same, you haven't got the same energy, you cannot access the fat stores the same, so you can do the same level of exercise and you burn less calories. So you're training and you're still not losing weight, so you tend to be more demotivated and you give up training without understanding this is what menopause does to you. You're going to have to change the way you train. And say, for example, you're in a wheelchair and you can't exercise hard and you can only do upper body work in the gym. And you can't do that aerobic activity that lots of people tell us is great for us. Yes, you might want to then take HRT. But just to take HRT because it's fashionable, I think is wrong. I think you should really consider, what will HRT bring you? Now, some of the scares around HRT are to do with the cardiac problems. So we know estrogen also thickens the blood a little bit. And they say you are slightly more likely to get a blood clot and therefore stroke and a heart attack. But you have to weigh it up against what else has that person got in the corner. You know, if you're fit and active and you don't have high blood pressure and you eat well and you don't eat saturated fats and you don't drink too much alcohol, you know, yeah, go ahead. It's the same with testosterone. And I think women have to have that choice now, because the other thing that happens with HRT at the moment is you can have it for 5 years. I think that is changing. I think they're going to suddenly say, like, women need this hormone replacement to keep them out of hospital because the NHS is on its knees. And we're caring for people that we could preempt with exercise and good nutrition at perimenopause phase, possibly give them HRT if they're keen on it and it shows great benefit to them, and possibly keep it on it for longer than 5 years.
So that was what I was going to actually say. You know, so for a woman, if she doesn't want to go down the HRT route, natural, you know, what would you say would be a more natural way for them to try?
Well, first thing first, as fitness instructors, we know
Yes, we know.
When you exercise, you boost your estrogen. All right. So when we do so we talk about muscles like we're going to train a muscle, but your muscles are part of your endocrine system and they signal to the brain and they boost your estrogen. So every single weight training session and workout that you do improves your estrogen. So if you're feeling like you've got low estrogen, go to the gym.
Yeah.
The second thing you can do is you can eat food with estrogen. All right. So some food has estrogen in it. So soy and flax and chia. But some people don't want to take that because they've got that familiar risk for breast cancer. But, you know, there's so many natural alternatives. There's nothing that is estrogen. We can make our own estrogen by exercising. But listen, the intensity has to be hard. Okay. So we can't kind of go into the gym and kind of, oh, you know, I'm 60 now. I'll just go for a gentle walk.
Do it. Clients, see, I told you.
It just doesn't work. So I don't know about you, Jill, but I started doing HIIT with clients. You know, not like HIIT you see on blooming Instagram with burpees, but that kind of higher intensity, short burst exercise. Because the other issue we haven't even talked about, and we probably haven't got time to talk about, is pelvic floor. Because we talk about endothelial cells, the inside of your bladder and your urethra just start to diminish its kind of contractibility. And, you know, if that's the case, this is not HRT, but you can get estrogen pessaries.
All right.
And what it does is you put them in a special place, and they have direct impact on vaginal tissue, which means that for some people, like going for a run or weight training and squatting is really painful, especially if you've maybe had children and you've got scar tissue from either a C-section or a episiotomy, or you've had a bladder repair or a bowel repair, or you've got any kind of prolapse. Estrogel, I don't think it's called estrogel, it's called something else. My brain's gone. So you have the pessary inside and you take it first thing in the morning, and it improves the tissue within that area and it helps relieve any kind of bladder problems, but also improves the tissue within that area to stop you feeling uncomfortable when you're squatting.
Okay, didn't know that. So what do you think then? So do you think as well that you know, you touched on it earlier about obviously the difference between going into menopause naturally and unnaturally? Do you think women seem to struggle that bit more when it's not natural? I have got a couple of clients that have obviously had hysterectomies and things like that, and they do seem to have had a much harder time.
Oh, it's terrible, because if you think like now, so if you, I don't know, so when you go through perimenopause, you have that little fluctuation phase. Okay, so it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And then it stabilizes. So once you're out of perimenopause, you don't get the hot flushes. You don't get all of those things. You kind of feel like, okay, I've got through the muddy waters. My estrogen levels are lower. So you might have the bit of an ache in joints, and you might find that you're putting on a little bit more weight around the middle, and all of those kind of things associated with lower levels of estrogen. But then the decline is slow from about the age of 50 to 80. Okay, and by 80, it's nearly all gone anyway. But it's a slow process. You can slow it down even further if you exercise, produce your own estrogen, you eat healthy foods that contain estrogen, and you do other things for your brain health, like, you know, social interactions and all of those things that you were saying about stress management and sleep process. But if you have had your ovaries taken out, There's no estrogen in your body within 48 hours. None. And so you hit menopause at the age of 80 within a month of having your hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And that is really a very difficult transition. But the long-term implications on health is your body has aged so much quicker in terms of loss of muscle mass, loss of bone mass, loss of brain tissue, increased intra-abdominal fat, which then causes more issues with the heart, loss of that tension in the heart. And if you had that and you had not been active, then it's worse again. So people who have had a hysterectomy with their ovaries removed, check if they've had one or two, and they have had maybe cancer treatment. Remember, it's not always 100% of the time with cancer. Sometimes you just get, it stops, during chemotherapy, but it might come back a little bit, but it's not always the case, and it's hard to measure. Or then you've got all the other risk factors. So say like somebody, I know you've been over this before, has never had children, hasn't breastfed, had one baby, hasn't breastfed, or is on asthma drugs, has low thyroid, then you can all of a sudden see that their risk factors are much higher than somebody who's had a natural menopause. And that's why it's so difficult to say, this works for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like there's they seem to really be struggling more, and having a much harder time.
Yeah.
Trying to sort of find their balance.
Yeah.
With the weight gain, all those, as you say, all those symptoms seem to just sort of hit like a steam train, don't they?
Yeah, because you've got no estrogen. Your body is like that of an estrogen level of somebody over 80.
So if we're aiming this obviously at perimenopause, menopausal women, what's your 3 top tips?
Number one.
I mean, there's probably more than 3, but
There's more than 3, Jill. Number one has to be, you have to be active, because the improvement in cognitive health by increasing blood flow through the brain, the improvement in bone density from lifting weights or lifting body weight or doing something that's active, the improvement where you use your muscles to be that endocrine system and boost, you can still produce a small amount via an enzyme if you train intensely, okay? So things like HIIT, where you're really pushing your heart rate up, you can get growth hormone stimulated, and that then works to produce a little bit. It doesn't produce estrogen, but it gives you similar protective measures. So, when you're weight training, you're looking for growth hormone. Taking growth hormone doesn't work, okay? So you have to contract the muscle to produce the growth hormone. And then that kind of enzyme can do it. So number one, be active. Number two, look after your brain. And I mean here is promote good sleep techniques, because lack of sleep has such a huge impact on BDNF that if you do not sleep, you need to get to grips with it. So you have to do things like, no phone in the dark, routine. If you're not sleeping in bed, get up, restrict your sleep until you can crack that kind of sleep issue. And the third thing is not to underestimate the kind of love because we don't have oxytocin as we go through menopause. I don't know whether you've noticed, but the oxytocin levels go down, and oxytocin is our love hormone. So we kind of lose that big joy about things. Everything's kind of, so we become more cynical. Have you noticed you're a bit more cynical and you're a bit more Karen to somebody because you just don't love people the same?
I can remember saying to my partner, I am dead inside. I am dead. I feel nothing.
I feel nothing. And it's like, oh, that's like really weird. Because we used to feel as females, aren't we? So you want to raise your oxytocin levels. So you have to do all the fluffy things, all right? So all the fluffy things that we think like, oh, that's nice. It suddenly is life-changing or life-saving. So going for a walk in the sunshine, having a hug, taking time out to spend time with your friend, going for a coffee, reading a nice book. These are essential to your health. So exercise, sleep, hug a friend.
Dog, hug a dog.
Get a dog, yeah. Anything that makes you feel love.
100% works for me.
Well, I have 2 dogs, so I can't say anything.
Me too.
Oh, see, they're so cute, dogs, aren't they?
They certainly are. They certainly keep me going. So this has been fantastic, and I feel like I just want to hang out with you a bit more, Rachel.
Yeah, please do, because I just feel like I'm on a mission. I think I feel cross that we missold this as like, take HRT, it fixes it. No, you can't just kind of go, that fixes it, because when our estrogen levels are declining every year, or you may not have any estrogen, you have to say, and it's a mantra of mine, Joe, I say, like, you have to do fitness from the inside. Don't care. Don't bother about what you look like on the outside. Outside will shine through. Excuse me. Outside will shine through when you start prioritizing your heart health, your brain health, and really everything else around it.
But obviously, as I say, we've been in the fitness industry for a long, long, long time. Years ago, it was very much just like, do this workout, do this, do that. And then a few years ago, my approach changed, obviously due to myself, and so now it runs in sort of 4 elements.
Yeah.
So with my clients, it's we do the weight training, but we do quite a big chunk on a lifestyle.
Yeah.
On being active, brain active.
Yeah.
Getting your steps in, making sure it's a leisurely walk.
Yeah.
And I just think these things need this 4 pillars, as you said earlier on, these different pillars to be put into place. It isn't, when you go on the internet, you go online, it's very much just like, well, just go on a diet. You'll be fine. And it doesn't work like that anymore.
It doesn't work like that. And that whole holistic approach, I think, is the key. And the thing is one, and you know, because you're doing it with your clients value that work, because you're an educated fitness trainer. To just say, okay, and I feel like you, fitness trainer for many years, to just say, do 3 sets, 15 reps on those 4 machines, and that's all you need, shows to me an educated person, because one size doesn't fit all in menopause.
Oh, 100%. It doesn't. So Rachel, where can everyone find you and follow you?
Okay. So I'm going to be, you're going to be sick of me after this. So I'm doing a couple of things. So like you, World Menopause Day is coming up. So I'm doing an online course. So if anybody wants to learn a little bit more, the online course, you can do it in your own time. You can find out. It's not aimed at fitness instructors. YMCA, I've been working with YMCA. So Unit 1 for anybody to find out a menopause is being launched on World Menopause Day. Unit 2, which is specific, recognized training for fitness instructors, going in depth into the endocrine system, into why we need to change our training protocols for women in the menopause, will be out in January 2025. I've got my own webpage. There's a few bits and bobs on there about menopause, as you can well imagine, but really I'm a social media. And RBH Fitness, with the B standing for Beyonce, Jill, because I still have to bring Beyonce out, because I think, like, when you lose confidence, you still think like, oh no, I can't do it. And so Beyonce is always with me to be my alter ego. Classes.
Do you not think, like, obviously we are going to wrap this up, but just for my 2 pennies worth, do you not think that, like, that kind of qualification should be mandatory?
I do. Yeah, I think Unit 1 should be mandatory for everybody, because I don't think, if we don't understand it, people need to understand the implications around the menopause. And then that second one, if you're a PT or you've got your own clients and you're really interested in menopause, go ahead and do that qualification. I spent hours with the YMCA working on it. I think it's a fantastic qualification, and it's going to empower the trainers. But for me in particular, I just think it's going to be life-changing for the women that we get in contact with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for your time, Rachel. It's been
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been really so great to chat to you, and I can't wait to put this up online.
Good. I hope you get some good feedback. Okay.
Thank you.